I'm five-time world karate kickboxing champion Anthony F. Elmore, who is also Memphis' first independent 35mm theatrical filmmaker. I'm here today to give you a video. My video is titled Memphis Black History Lecture from Father of Black Memphis History, Anthony F. Elmore. The father of African American history, Carter G. Woodson, says, "Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history."
Freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying now, you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King was standing on the balcony of a second-floor hotel room tonight when, according to a companion, a shot was fired from across the street. In the friend's words, the bullet exploded in his face. Police, who have been keeping a close watch over the Nobel Peace Prize winner because of Memphis' turbulent racial situation, were on the scene almost immediately. They rushed the 39-year-old Negro leader to a hospital where he died of a bullet wound in the neck. In a nationwide television address, President Johnson expressed the nation's shock.
America is shocked and saddened by the brutal slaying tonight of Dr. Martin Luther King. I ask every citizen to reject the blind violence that has struck Dr. King, who lived by nonviolence.
Dr. King had returned to Memphis only yesterday, determined to prove that he could lead a peaceful mass march in support of striking sanitation workers, most of whom are Negroes. Dr. King had this to say last night about the situation in Memphis.
Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for right.
There was shock in Harlem tonight when word of Dr. King's murder reached the nation's largest Negro community. Men, women, and children poured into the streets. They appeared dazed. Many were crying. A young Negro said Dr. King didn't really have to go back to Memphis. Maybe he wanted to prove something.
Let's get into it. You see, in 1794, Eli Whitney patented the cotton gin, a machine that revolutionized the production of cotton, and actually it speeded up the process of removing the seeds from the cotton fibers. America was about to abolish slavery, but cotton gin. The cotton gin is what made slavery profitable. In the mid-19th century, cotton had become America's leading export. So this is how you understand about Memphis. You see, when Andrew Jackson, John Overton, and Marcus Winchester founded Memphis, it was all about white gold. White gold was cotton. See, Dr. Martin Luther King getting killed in Memphis was not the first historic killing of black people in Memphis by white people. Memphis has a history of unjustly killing and suppressing black people. Let us be clear, Memphis did not just suppress black people. Memphis is the city in America, whereas today, our black history of Memphis is continuously being suppressed. Memphis was the first city in the South conquered by the Union Army in 1862. The white Confederate residents fled to Mississippi. This left Memphis with the majority white Irish immigrants. The Irish became the mayor, the police chief, and the fire chief in charge of running Memphis. They got into a confrontation with some black soldiers in the Union Army. To make a long story short, Irish mobs went on a black killing spree for 3 days, known as the Memphis Massacre. Just look it up. Look it up. You see, this story of the killing and raping and robbing and looting, this is a part of Memphis history. You see, Memphis, Tennessee has suppressed the history of the most significant black man in Memphis' 200-year history. The reason that this history is suppressed is because of racism and white supremacy. The most significant black man in Memphis history was Robert R. Church Sr. Robert R. Church is the soul of Memphis history. Let's put Robert R. Church Sr. in context and contrast to the white races in Memphis. You see, the Civil War ended in 1865. However, we have an organization called the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and the white people arguing over the Civil War and Confederate history contemporaneous with this lecture. These white people represent a significant part of the Memphis history and culture. In regards to Memphis' 200-year bicentennial celebration, we black people are the sons of Robert R. Church Sr. Robert R. Church was our grandfather, our parent, our relatives. Despite white racism, hate, jealousy, envy, being shot in the head twice, riots, the exodus of blacks to Oklahoma, he stood for Memphis so much that he made Beale Street the main street of black America. The legacy of Robert R. Church Sr. gives us black people the legacy and history to celebrate Memphis' 200th bicentennial celebration about Robert R. Church. You see, let's look at the most significant white man in Memphis' 200-year history. I ask you this question: who was or who is the most significant white man in Memphis' 200-year history? That man is Nathan Bedford Forrest. Tennessee has 32 dedicated historical markers linked to Nathan Bedford Forrest, more than are dedicated to all three former presidents associated with the state combined. That's Andrew Jackson, James K. Polk, and Andrew Johnson. The Tennessee legislature established July 13th as Nathan Bedford Forrest Day. The Sons of the Confederate Veterans posthumously awarded Forrest their Confederate Medal of Honor, created in 1977. Nathan Bedford Forrest was a Southern white folk hero and the symbol in Memphis, Tennessee that represented not only white supremacy, he represented fear, intimidation, and violence at all costs against black people, for black people to remain in their place. In fact, in 1905, the slave trader statute raised to keep blacks in their place. Modern day public policy does the same. Slave trade allowed Nathan Bedford Forrest to become the richest man in Tennessee. In fact, starting in 1855, Memphis emerged as the slave capital of the world. In addition to the more than 3,000 enslaved people who lived and worked in Memphis at the time, thousands more flowed into and out of the city. As traders, their agents brought a steady supply of human cargo into Memphis via roads, rivers, and rail. Memphis was the slave capital of the world. It is no coincidence. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King, our king, get killed in Memphis, he got killed in King Cotton. You see, Memphis was founded in 1819 by the father of ethnic cleansing, Andrew Jackson, along with John Overton and Marcus Winchester. You see, Andrew Jackson not only gained a reputation of killing Native Americans, it was President Andrew Jackson who signed the Indian Removal Act of 1830, whereas we read about the infamous Trail of Tears, whereas all Native Americans had to be moved to a reservation. While Andrew Jackson was a wealthy slave owner and founder of Memphis, it was Nathan Bedford Forrest whose spirit veils the culture and the history of Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee is the spirit of Nathan Bedford Forrest. You see, white supremacy and racism do not share about Memphis, Tennessee is the fact that Memphis became the slave capital of the world. See, history proves Memphis is not just Memphis. Memphis was the slave capital of the world. I want you to look at an ad in the Memphis newspaper around 1855 from the Forrest and Maples slave dealers, 87 Adams Street. It says, quote, have constantly on hand best assortment of field hands, house servants, and mechanics at their Negro mart to be found in the city. They are receiving from Virginia, Kentucky, and Missouri fresh supplies of young Negroes. Negroes sold on commission the highest market price, always paid for good stock. Their jail is capable of containing 300, and for comfort, neatness, and safety, the best arranged of in the Union. Persons wishing to purchase are invited to examine their stock before purchasing elsewhere. To have on hand at present 50 likely young Negroes comprising of field hands, mechanics, house and body servants, etc. Unquote. You see, white supremacy and racism remove the soul and heart out of black history of Memphis. Just ask anyone, have they ever heard of Count Chelsea, a contraband count in Memphis, or where was it located? Even more historic, ask anyone to identify Fort Pickering in Memphis, Tennessee. I visited the area of Fort Pickering in Memphis, Tennessee, and there's not even a marker. White supremacy and racism purposely hides this black history. White supremacy purposely removed the soul out of the story of Memphis. See, unknown to black people in Memphis in regards to black soldiers fighting in the Union Army, most of those black soldiers came from right here in Memphis, Tennessee, right in this area. In fact, it was black soldiers right here in Tennessee who suffered the worst hardship. Volunteers from South Carolina, Tennessee, and Massachusetts filled the first authorized black regiments. When we think of black Union soldiers, we do not think of Memphis because racism and white supremacy wrote the history of the black Union soldiers out of the annals of Memphis history. Clear-cut evidence shows that white supremacy want black people to remember Nathan Bedford Forrest and white supremacy instead of the black pride and dignity of our ancestors fighting in the Union Army. Let us put this into historical context. Most of America saw Woods and know the story of Alex Haley. The story took place just 40 miles from Memphis in Henning, Tennessee. That's where Alex Haley is from. There was a fort that was taken over by the Union Army called Fort Pillow. Nathan Bedford Forrest not only conquered the fort, he not only killed the black soldiers. After they surrendered, they killed them and mutilated the bodies of black soldiers. This was not just a massacre of Fort Pillow. This was a ploy to induce fear and retribution to black people who had the nerve to fight white people. This was an act of white supremacy. Let us understand white supremacy. The image of Nathan Bedford Forrest killing, raiding, burning, and terrorizing black people is the logo or the image of the Ku Klux Klan. The Klan image and white supremacy is the hallmark of Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee, while unknown to the average African American, is the capital of the Old South. Memphis was called King Cotton, and today, in 2019, Memphis is still the cotton capital of the world. In fact, it is in Memphis, Tennessee, where we find not only the greatest display of white supremacy in the 20th century, Memphis, Tennessee is the city of the Confederate South's greatest victories. Confederates gained 2 victories. Their most auspicious victory was the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, and their lasting and institutional victory is Graceland and Elvis Presley. It is Graceland and Memphis where we find the greatest display of white supremacy and victory of the South in the 20th century. Memphis is a city where the Confederate President Jefferson Davis and the racist Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest moved after the Civil War. The way that we black people in Memphis, Tennessee should celebrate our 200th anniversary is for blacks in Memphis and our nation and around the world to rise up and take on the racist, false narrative of Elvis and Graceland. White supremacists, white racists turned Elvis Presley and Graceland into the greatest display of white supremacy, segregation, racism, and victory for the South in the 20th century.
Elvis was a hero the most, but he never missed. To me, it's he straight out racist the sucker was simple and plain. Motherfucking is John Wayne. Cause I'm black and I'm proud. Cause I'm amped.
It was 30 years ago that filmmaker Spike Lee challenged the powers to be in Memphis, Tennessee via using Public Enemy to bring attention to the false narrative of Elvis Presley, Graceland, and the white supremacist image of racism and segregation. White racists in Memphis created a false narrative of Elvis Presley, whereas they used Elvis Presley as America's greatest tool for segregation, racism, and white supremacy in modern American history. Elvis in Tupelo used to listen to Arthur Big Boy Kudik on the radio. Elvis, in his own words, said, "If I ever got to the place where I could feel like old Arthur felt, I'd be like a music man like nobody ever saw."
You ain't no friend of mine. There is no room in this city for the vulgar performances of Elvis Presley.
It's shocking. I watched him gyrate his legs and swivel his hips. And our parent-teachers group feels he should not be on television.
We've set up a 20-man committee to do away with this vulgar, animalistic, nigger rock and roll bob. Our committee will check with the restaurant owners and the cafes to see what Presley records is on their machines and then ask them to do away with them.
You've learned anything from the criticism level that you?
No, I haven't.
You haven't, huh?
Because I don't feel I'm doing anything wrong.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog.
Rock and roll has got to go. And go it does at KWK. We're all through playing rock and roll records. This week is record-breaking week here at KWK. And after this week, no more rock and roll will be played on the air.
The obscenity and vulgarity of the rock and roll music is obviously a means by which the white man and his children can be driven to the level with the nigger. It is obviously nigger music.
The system of white supremacy and racism changed the narrative of Elvis Presley. Pundits note that it was Elvis' manager, Colonel Parker, that turned Elvis Presley into the greatest tool of segregation, racism, white supremacy, and victory for the Old South in the 20th century. The Colonel connected Elvis' image to the antebellum home of Graceland, the Old South. From 1958, Elvis practiced strict Southern protocol, whereas Elvis' image would be estranged from black people in the strictest sense of Southern protocol, whereas he was in the image of being only the king and supreme, and blacks were always associated in traditional Southern roles, like the maid. Having Negro backup singers was acceptable. In fact, Elvis in 1975 made a racist joke saying the black singers smell like catfish, resulting to a few walking off stage. The way that whites in Memphis created a false narrative was calling the 1951 song recorded by Ike Turner and Jackie Brimstone a rock and roll song. Look at the 1951 poster, whereas they made their first appearance in Memphis in Orange Mound at the W.C. Handy Theater. Most people cannot remember the W.C. Handy Theater because it was later called the Showcase on Park Avenue that was recently torn down. There is no way we black people in 1951 would call the Ike Turner Jackie Brimstone song a rock and roll song. This could not be the first rock and roll song. In fact, whites in Memphis had in 1951 had not invented their white rock and roll music in 1951. Now, there are two narratives of rock and roll music. There is the true narrative created in Cleveland by Alan Freed, and there is the white narrative, false narrative created in Memphis, Tennessee. The best way to understand the false Memphis narrative is by virtue of the fact that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland, Ohio, and not Memphis, Tennessee. If the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was in Memphis, Tennessee, it would have been a perpetual monument of white supremacy and racism and a slander to black people worldwide.
Here it is, Alan Freed's Rock and Roll Party. And here he is in person, Alan Freed.
Hello everybody, how y'all? Welcome to our Rock and Roll Jubilee of Stars. And here we go to rockin' with Waylon Tennerman, Freddie Mitchell, and the Rock and Roll Boogie. Here we go.
Black people just didn't get on television or be able to get introduced to white people. It was Alan Freed who introduced black people and black entertainers to white America. Now, let me give you the facts of history. Black entertainers in the South were not allowed to openly entertain the white audiences. Black people had to play behind curtains, and they were subject to indignities. Secondly, black songs were re-recorded by white artists to make the music acceptable to white America. Now, Mr. Alan Freed, on the other hand, was a white man who treated black people, black music, and black entertainers with equality. In the 1950s, America and the South was a Jim Crow racist society. Alan Freed was a champion and a hero to black people. Alan Freed and WJW treated black people as human. Alan Freed sponsored and promoted the Moondog Coronation Ball on March 21st, 1952. Not only did they sell out 10,000 tickets, another 20,000 black people showed up for the concert. Now, this is phenomenal that something like this would happen, that you had 30,000 black people. Look at the picture, how well they were dressed. Black people were given equality. Now, let's take this thing even further. Now, you see, please understand this history. There was no way that black entertainers could be exposed to white audience. However, it was Alan Freed who introduced black entertainers to white America. Alan Freed went against the grain, in that he was a man who exposed black music to white America. Now, you see, Alan Freed rose to fame so quickly that he became a superstar, and he moved to New York in 1954. Now, when he moved to New York, there was another Moondog in New York, and they were going to sue him for using that name. So he decided to call his late night show, instead of the Moondog Show, he called it the Rock and Roll Dance Party. While it's been noted that rock and roll was a well-known slang term meaning sex in the black neighborhood,
it rocked the establishment.
Freed got credit for inventing the term rock and roll, which was a black term. You see, Alan Freed took his rock and roll shows throughout America. The problem with Freed was that his black shows were attracting white youth as well as black youth. Freed made a lot of enemies because he was integrating America and exposing white youth to black music. It was Alan Freed who became known in America as Mr. Rock and Roll. Now, please understand that rock and roll bifurcated into two narratives. You see, there is the history of rock and roll created by Alan Freed, who was destroyed by white supremacy in the system, and there is the white racist rock and roll narrative created in Memphis, Tennessee. Let me explain how Elvis Aaron Presley transitioned from the hero and model of integration to become the model of white supremacy and segregation. It was in 1957 when Elvis Presley allegedly said, quote, "All Negroes can do for him was buy his records and shine his shoes." Jet magazine tracked Elvis down and asked him about this statement, and Elvis replied, quote, "Anyone who knows me know that I would not say a thing like that," unquote. In 1957, Elvis Presley is on record of taking pictures with other celebrities at the WDIA Good Review. In fact, in June of 1956, Elvis Presley went to the fairgrounds with black people, and just 2 months later, the 14-year-old Emmett Till had gotten killed, so the spirit of America was really, really tough, and Elvis actually integrated places. Now, we will show you how white racism, and white supremacy transitioned Elvis Presley to become the greatest tool of white supremacy and segregation in the 20th century. Let us start with Elvis' first movie, Love Me Tender. It was the white system in 1956 that transitioned Elvis Presley's image of white supremacy in the Old South to segregation and racism. Look at the movie poster of Love Me Tender. The caption reads, quote, "Mr. Rock and Roll in the story he was born to play," unquote. You see, the story that Elvis was born to play was transitioning rock and roll music to the Confederate, the Old South, and racism. James Brown was friends with Elvis, and James Brown even stayed at Elvis' home from time to time. But Elvis and James Brown never took pictures together because Elvis had to maintain social protocol, and Elvis never showed an image of a black person equal to him. He was the king, and he always showed the image of Southern protocol and white superiority. White racists attacked Alan Freed in Memphis, while Memphis, Tennessee changed the narrative of rock and roll from Alan Freed, who associated black, to Elvis Presley, who became the symbol of white supremacy. You see, Elvis Presley became the great white king, the South's greatest victory since the Civil War. You see, in 1954, Alan Freed was in New York on a 24-hour rock and roll station. Most importantly, Freed's show was syndicated, and not only over 40 of stations in America, Alan Freed did a weekly show called The Jamboree that aired on Radio Luxembourg, heard throughout the British Isles and all over Europe. The channel was very strong in Liverpool. This is where Paul McCartney, John Lennon, Mick Jagger, and others became influenced by the black music of like Little Richard and Chuck Berry and James Brown. It was because of the black music, whereas we got the British invasion. It was in 1964, whereas President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But it was in 1964 when the British invasion came to America, when the Beatles came to America. Unlike Elvis Presley, who was America's greatest tool for segregation, it was the Beatles who came to America to join the Civil Rights Movement. In fact, the Beatles refused to play at segregated audiences, stay at segregated hotels. Now, this is what Paul McCartney said at a Little Rock concert. Now, Paul McCartney introduced his song Blackbird by telling the audience, quote, Way back in the 60s, there was a lot of trouble going on, civil rights, particularly in Little Rock. We would notice this on the news back in England. So it's really important place for us because to me, this is where civil rights started. We would see what was going on and sympathize with people going through those troubles. And it made me want to write a song. If it ever got back to the people going through those troubles, it might help them a little bit. Unquote.
Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
Elvis never showed sympathy to black people or the black movement. He was missing in action. White people use Elvis Presley to promote white supremacy, segregation, and racism. White people will cuss me out when I make this next statement. The real Elvis Presley was a black man by the name of Otis Blackwell, who wrote many of the Elvis Presley early hits. Elvis Presley simply imitated this black man's music. Many of those hits white people cry about were written by Otis Blackwell and only performed by the white Elvis Presley. Let us meet the real Elvis Presley, a black man by the name of Otis Blackwell.
True that when he heard you performing the material, that he would imitate your style when he recorded the song?
Well, they did come out very close to the demos that we did.
Did you ever meet Elvis Presley?
No, I never met Elvis.
How many years were you writing songs for him?
Well, I had signed up with him on the contract to be a writer for just his company for 5 years. Never wanted to meet him. I didn't want to meet him rather at the time. I wanted to, but didn't at that time. We had something I felt that was going pretty good. Not that you could make a good money writing songs.
Yeah, doing it. And this will be Don't Be Cruel, as it was initially written by Mr. Otis Blackwell. Let us go on over there and do this.
You know I can't be found. Sleep home all alone. And if you can't come around, at least be still and fall. Don't be cruel to a heart so true. Baby, if I made you mad, something that I might have said, please let me give it back. A future looks bright ahead. Don't be cruel to a heart so true.
Let me explain injustice and inequality. Not only did Elvis started dating Priscilla when she was 14 years old and he was 24 years old. Elvis brought Priscilla from Germany and they shacked for 8 years before they married. At 16 years old, Priscilla, living in Memphis, had not finished school. Michael Jackson's behavior was alleged. But by today's standards, Elvis would be considered a pedophiliac. The reality is, Elvis is a white man who had Dr. Nick feeding him with drugs. We do not vilify Elvis, but we do point out that white privilege allows society to turn their heads about Elvis. What we black people should not turn our head on is the legacy of rock and roll music. Rock and roll is the legacy and the struggle of black people. Music is all we had to get us through. The idea that a white man who is an imitator and not an innovator is crowned king is an insult to black people worldwide. And we black people should turn this issue into a national protest. In 1819, when Memphis was founded, African Americans were slaves. It was not until 1863 when African Americans gained their equality in Memphis, Tennessee. We're not talking about the 13th Amendment or the Emancipation Proclamation. The true equality for black people in Memphis was when blacks in Memphis enlisted in the Union Army. In the spring of 1863, by June of 1863, 3,000 men in Memphis and 24,000 in Tennessee had joined the Union Army. In fact, 1 in every 4 black Memphians joined the Union Army. Our black history in Memphis starts with the black Union soldiers. Now, let me explain Memphis history. Clearly, the first equality for black men in Memphis starts with the Union Army. This is what happened in Memphis. White supremacy and racism extricated this black history from Memphis and Shelby County. The black soldiers were stationed at Fort Pickering on the river in a black neighborhood called French Fort. White racists tore down Fort Pickering to remove this history of equality from the minds of black people in Memphis. The foundation, unity, brotherhood, community, building of black people in Memphis came from the black Union soldiers. A black soldier who fought white people understood equality, courage, dignity, education, and community. White racists made it a point to remove equality from the minds of black people in Memphis. The way racist whites removed this black pride was to remove that history of black Union soldiers from Memphis history. Please note that Memphis, Tennessee used the image of Nathan Bedford Forrest and the Confederacy as our reminder of the Civil War. We black people in Memphis should demand that this black history be restored, including Fort Pickering. This should be a museum because this is some of the great history of black people in Memphis, Tennessee. In the 1870s, thousands in Memphis died from the yellow fever. And it was in 1878 when panic set in and 25,000 people fled Memphis in a panic. Those so-called tough and strong Confederate soldiers and the white people ran, they had guns and forced themselves on ships to get out because they feared. In fact, so many white people left that there were 14,000 black people left and 6,000 whites. Now, it was Robert R. Church who purchased a police wagon, and it was those black soldiers, the black militias, who upheld and protected Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis lost its charter in 1879 and became a taxing district. If you want to know black history, it was black people who saved Memphis during the Yellow Fever. It was black soldiers who were the policemen. It was the black militias who protected Memphis, Tennessee. The Yellow Fever allowed Robert R. Church to purchase a lot of property in the 1880s. The Yellow Fever allowed black people to achieve positions of equality in Memphis. While Memphis lost its charter in 1879, a group of 25 white Memphians via donations built the Grand Opera House at Main and Bill in 1880. This would later be known in Memphis and rebuilt as the Orpheum Theater. Now, while black Memphis saved Memphis during the Yellow Fever, blacks still face racism and discrimination in Memphis. In fact, blacks were not even allowed to go to parks or segregated places in Memphis. Please understand that whites in Memphis fought tooth and nail to prevent black people from achieving equality in Memphis. Let me explain why Robert R. Church Sr. is the most significant black man in Memphis history. Robert R. Church, the South's first black millionaire, challenged white racism and inequality by using his money, power, and influence to make black people equal to whites in Memphis. In 1899, Robert R. Church built at the corner of Bill and Ford's Church Park and Auditorium. This was not just an ordinary park. This was a botanical garden with exotic plants, banana trees, peacocks gracing the grounds. Robert R. Church Sr. built for black people an auditorium and a park better than any place that blacks were not allowed to attend. Memphis built its first facility and theater in 1880. Now, it was in New York, whereas they built Carnegie Hall in 1891. Church Park and Auditorium was the largest facility built for blacks by blacks in the world. Please understand racism and white supremacy. Whites were supposed to be supreme. You had a black man who built a place for blacks superior to any white establishment. This effort led America and the world to know about not only this black millionaire, it was because of Robert R. Church Sr. who made Beale Street the main street of black America. You see, white racism in Memphis caused white leaders to change the narrative about Beale Street. See, the white narrative that whites teach about Beale Street, one of the most famous streets in America, it is taught that Beale Street is famous because it was the place where we find the birth of the blues. Now, let us deal in the facts of history. W.C. Handy arrived in Memphis in 1909. He did not come to Memphis to play the blues. He came to Memphis because of Robert R. Church Sr. He became an orchestra leader for Mr. Church. In 1912, he recorded a record called Memphis Blues, now, which was his first successful song. Because of racism in Memphis and in the South, Handy moved to New York, where his work was appreciated. He continued to promote blues to large audiences during the 1920s, editing the book, The Anthology. That was in 1926, which contained blues arrangements for vocals and piano, and organizing the first blues performance in New York's City Carnegie Hall. This is in 1928. Handy continued working steadily through the 1930s, publishing Negro artists and composers of the United States. In 1935, W.C. Handy's collection of Negro spirituals in 1938. Now, a few years later, in 1941, he published an autobiography called Father of the Blues. His life story was played on the silver screen in theaters across the country in the film St. Louis Blues, which starred singer Nat King Cole as the legendary composer. If it was not for Robert R. Church Sr. and he making Beale Street the main street of black America in Memphis, Memphis would not have been the birthplace of the blues. We told you that Robert R. Church Sr. in 1899 built the largest auditorium on Beale Street for black people in the world. You also understand that during the Yellow Fever of 1878, blacks made gangs in Memphis. The Church Park and Auditorium, built in 1899, it was only natural that in 1890 that the first neighborhood built for blacks by blacks was established in Memphis. This is my neighborhood called Orange Mound, built in 1890. An event happened in 1892 that would change the destiny of Memphis forever. After the yellow fever, Memphis was integrated, and there was a group of blacks who formed a co-op called People's Grocery. The blacks did business with other blacks, and the white owner, upset, tried to burn the black men's store down. You see, these men were Union soldiers. They had guns and kept vigil. Now, when the white men tried to come and burn the black men's store down, they waited and shot the attempted arsonists. Now, the Irish police arrested the black men. Black people came to their aid. A riot almost ensued. They told everyone to go home and they would sort things out in the morning. Later that night, mobs of whites took the black men out and hung them. They asked Thomas Moss, did he have any last words? And he said, tell my people to go west, that there was no justice in Memphis. In 1892, there was a different kind of black community in that the community was unified. The ministers and black leaders were so upset about the killing of the black men that 6,000 blacks, you name it, and they took wagon trains and they moved to Oklahoma and established black towns. They became so well established that they even established in Black Wall Street. The same racism they found in Memphis, they would later find in Oklahoma. Imagine the talent that departed Memphis in 1892. It was Ida B. Wells who had some choice words to say about the whites in Memphis. Whites destroyed her printing press, and they told her if she ever came back to Memphis, they would kill her also. She later became the most famous black woman in America, a crusader against anti-lynching. Now, her friend Julia B. Hooks, she became later known as the Angel of Beale Street, a music teacher and a pioneer for civil rights. Now, Church Auditorium became the cultural center for the African American community in this region. Church and local black Republicans held rallies and meetings. In fact, President Theodore Roosevelt spoke at a gathering of 10,000 persons at Church Park Auditorium in 1902. Who's who in America came to Church Park, from Frederick Douglass to James Wendell Johnson to Booker T. Washington. It was Booker T. Washington who advised Church to open Sovereign and Savings Bank and Trust that became one of the largest black banks in 1905, at the unveiling of the Nathan Bedford Forrest statue, the Forrest biographer wrote, quote, "Coloreds have been suddenly emancipated and even invested with a certain authority. Colored people needed to be frightened into docility and good behavior," unquote. Let us be clear. The most influential white man in Memphis was Nathan Bedford Forrest, in that Memphis, Tennessee adopted the spirit of Forrest through E.H. Crump. E.H. Crump frightened black people into docility and good behavior. Crump used law enforcement to rid Memphis of any and all black people who would challenge him. Crump ran Church Jr. out of Memphis. Church Jr. tried to influence Memphis via his friend Dr. Martin, who owned the Memphis Red Sox black baseball team. Crump used law enforcement to frisk customers coming into his business, and he ran the Martins out of Memphis. This is what you must understand. During the time of Robert R. Church Sr., Memphis had integrated communities. E.H. Crump, who was elected in 1909, made sure there were not only no integrated communities. E.H. Crump carried out the will of Nathan Bedford Forrest. By the end of 1940, E.H. Crump not only purged successfully the Shelby County Republican Party of its strong black leadership, E.H. Crump purged Black Memphis out of any history of strong black leadership. He used tax laws to take the property and wealth from Robert R. Church. Significantly, E.H. Crump removed the history of Robert R. Church from Memphis. They changed the name of Church Park and Auditorium to Bill Avenue Park and Auditorium. E.H. Crump put the nail in the coffin when the city purposefully burned down the Robert R. Church home. The E.H. Crump burning down of the Robert R. Church home was a significant act of white supremacy and racism in Memphis. Let us go back to a statement that E.H. Crump made to the Memphis World newspaper editor. Quote, "You have a bunch of niggers teaching social equality, stirring up racial hatred. I'm not going to stand for it. I've dealt with niggers all my life, and I know how to treat them. This is Memphis," unquote. The one thing that white people fought against in Memphis, Tennessee was social equality. Let us move to 1941 in Memphis, Tennessee. White supremacists and staunch segregationists E.H. Crump sent a message to black people in Memphis via his racist act of forced inequality in Memphis. One of the best black middle-class neighborhoods in Memphis was the area from Vance and Lauderdale to Mississippi. The area even had some white residents. E.H. Crump sent a chilling message to Black Memphis. Crump was clear when he said, quote, "I've dealt with niggers all my life, and I know how to deal and treat them." It was a big thing for us black people to go to T.O. Fuller Park. Reverend T.O. Fuller was a major accommodationalist who was a supporter of E.H. Crump. He was very conservative and pastor of the First Colored Baptist Church on St. Paul Street. They were a breakaway church from the First Baptist Bill. It was Reverend T.O. Fuller who lobbied in 1920s to change the name of Negro Industrial High School to Booker T. Washington High School. The reason that we mention Reverend T.O. Fuller is that he was among the black conservative supporters of E.H. Crump. There was a group of conservative black supporters of E.H. Crump called the Black Democratic Club, headed by Dr. J.E. Walker. If you want to understand Black Memphis, Tennessee today, then you must understand Black Memphis of yesterday. You see, there existed two schools of thought in Memphis, Tennessee. Robert R. Church Sr. and Robert R. Church Jr. fought and accomplished economic and social equality in Memphis. Robert R. Church went toe-to-toe challenging E.H. Crump. Dr. J.E. Walker, who founded Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church, and E.H. Crump was the person who ordained Dr. J.E. Walker and the conservative blacks as the leaders in the black community. Like one example is Reverend Blair T. Hunt, who is a principal at Washington High School. Tri-State Bank was founded in 1946 is an example of blacks who succeeded with the blessings of E.H. Crump. You see, the Ford family was the result of a relationship with E.H. Crump. E.H. Ford was named after Crump. One other interesting note about the Ford family was their grandfather and uncle, Jackson and Essex Jeter, who owned the land that became Jeter School. They were Union Army soldiers. They were slaves, but they were Union Army soldiers. So the Ford family go back. So does the Hooks family. You see, this is what E.H. Crump did. He tore down perhaps the best black middle-class neighborhood in Memphis, and he replaced it with William Foote homes. Although blacks who supported him, they asked and begged Mayor Watkins Overson not to destroy the homes. Crump sent a message with action that said again, quote, "I've dealt with niggers all my life and I know how to treat them." Look at the picture of Williams Foote homes, a history of forced inequality in Memphis. Ralph J. Bunche, political scientist, academic, and diplomat, and the first black who received a Nobel Peace Prize in 1950, he wrote in a study called The Political Status of the Negro, and he noted this about Memphis ministers. He said that Memphis ministers avoided social questions or comments on discrimination, instead preaching fire and brimstone sermons that aroused emotions of their congregations. E.H. Crump implemented terror on blacks in Memphis, using police to terrorize Dr. Martin, and Dr. Martin was forced to leave Memphis. With courage and resolve, Robert R. Church Jr. was run out of Memphis and sacrificed everything to come back. In fact, in 1916, Church founded the Lincoln League that he founded and he financed in Memphis. Also, he worked to increase voter registration and participation in voting by black city residents. In 1917, it was Robert R. Church Jr., who organized the Memphis branch of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. It was the first branch in the state of Tennessee. 2 years later, Church was elected to the National Board of Directors for the NAACP in recognition of his growing national influence. His Lincoln League provided the swing votes that propel Republicans to victory in several Memphis and Shelby County elections. National GOP party officials acknowledged his leadership by consulting him on federal patronage in the region. In other words, people who got jobs from the federal government, it was Robert R. Church Jr. who they consulted to give certain jobs. Church visited Memphis in 1952 after attending the Republican State Convention in Nashville to campaign for presidential candidate General Dwight D. Eisenhower. While discussing politics with friends, 64-year-old Robert R. Church Jr. died of a heart attack on April 17, 1952. Eisenhower did become our president. Our father, our friend, and our family, Robert R. Church, could not live long enough to help Memphis. It pains my heart that our family, Robert R. Church, the last African American to practice black economic equality died. The chosen black leader was Dr. J.E. Walker, who ran the NAACP, and the appointed H. Crump black leader who Crump had chosen. On July 28, 1958, Dr. Walker was shot to death in his office at Universal Life Insurance Company. Interesting things did happen in Memphis. A young man who originally went to Morehouse with Dr. Martin Luther King went on to earn a law degree from Harvard University. He invited his friend Dr. Martin Luther King to Memphis in 1959. He and others organized a giant political rally in Memphis at Mason Temple, where Dr. King gave his last speech in 1968, but Dr. King came to Memphis in 1959. That young man was the late Russell B. Sugarman, who died in Memphis just recently in 2019. With fellow attorneys A.W. Willis, Benjamin Hooks, B.N.F. Jones, and H.T. Lockhart, Sugarman was the architect of a legal and political challenge of the white supremacy enforced by law, even after Brown ruling was in writing. It was these attorneys who came to change the laws and circumstances in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, Sugarman ran for Public Works Commissioner, Hooks for Juvenile Court Judge, and Steinbach for City Tax Assessor, and Love and Bunton running for seats on the school board. Not only did Dr. King speak at this gala event, they had gospel singer Mahalia Jackson to sing at the event. In 1964, A.W. Willis became the first African American elected to the Tennessee legislature since Reconstruction. Sugarman followed in 1966, and from that time henceforth, African Americans began to be elected to political offices in Memphis, Tennessee. While the world knows about the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis on April 4th, 1968, Memphis, Tennessee had a concurrent assassination that is not known to the world thanks to racism, white supremacy, and colonization. Unknowingly to black people in Memphis, black Memphians are the victims of colonization. Memphis boasts about the new Stax Museum, but none or very few words are mentioned about the targeted assassination of Stax records in Memphis. Also, white racists were able to neutralize the most significant black leader to emerge in Memphis, Tennessee since Robert R. Church Jr. of Memphis. In Memphis, Tennessee, we African Americans have a museum and whites have a monument in Graceland, just as Robert R. Church Jr. was run out of Memphis. The nearest African American model of creating economic equality came in the effort and the spirit of Al Bell, a black man who became the owner of Stax Records. Al Bell became a black man who could have created economic equality in Memphis. 1975 is when Stax was forced into involuntary bankruptcy. The company masters were valued Price Waterhouse at $67 million.
We are not going to argue with you about the merits of your antitrust suit. It's just that we have more time than you and more money than you. And I said, sir, there's no question that you have more money than me. But time, I question, because it's a matter of principle. So you can consider this the beginning of World War III.
It was L. Bell who guided Stax to not only a miraculous revival, it was L. Bell who made Stax best known as to how we remember Stax. Now, let me tell you about the miracle at Stax. Under L. Bell, Stax became not only one of the nation's largest black-owned companies, it was because of Al Bell that Stax became Soulsville, USA. In May of 1969 alone, Stax released 27 albums and 30 singles. This was unprecedented. While Stax lost their catalog, it was L. Bell who understood black music and who built the new Stax. It was under the vision of L. Bell that we got in Isaac Hayes. See, Isaac Hayes was a songwriter and a behind-the-scenes man. Isaac's first album was a flop. It was L. Bell who encouraged Isaac Hayes to be creative. In fact, when Isaac Hayes did the 18-minute version of By the Time I Get to Phoenix, Isaac was just playing around. Now, there was never such a thing as an 18-minute song. It was L. Bell and Isaac Hayes who wrote the song Hyperbolic Espialidocious. I cannot even say the word. It was on Hot Butter Soul album that not only changed Stax, but Hot Buttered Soul turned Isaac Hayes into a folk hero when he won the Grammy and Emmy Award for the black movie Shaft. Now, let me explain to you why whites and racism put Stax out of business. You see, in 1972, when Stax rented the stadium in Los Angeles, it was a joke that a little black company in Memphis, Tennessee was renting a stadium. Not only did they rent the stadium, they went into the movie making business with a movie called What's Stax? See, Stax stopped being a joke when this little company in Memphis, Tennessee, black owned, brought out 112,000 black people to a stadium in Los Angeles. They made a movie whereas they could reach millions of black people. There was Jesse Jackson with a dashiki and a big fro, and they sang the black national anthem, displaying the black power sign, and black people talking about black pride. There was Isaac Hayes, the black Moses that was there. Oh my goodness. You see, it was almost overnight, whereas Isaac Hayes, who could now purchase a home in Chickasaw Garden, the wealthiest white neighborhood in Memphis. Now, please pardon my language, but them white folk got together and they said, we got to stop these niggas. If these niggas are not stopped, they are going to be as rich as white people. L. Bell was not a normal black man from Memphis whose mind was colonized by the Memphis white racist culture. See, we explained to you that in Memphis, Tennessee, white people got rid of Robert R. Church and Dr. Martin, who owned the black baseball team, these guys were businessmen. They promoted equality and black economic development. You see, This is the white rule for blacks in Memphis. You see, blacks who were allowed to have money under Crump, they were not allowed to use their wealth for black power and black economic development that would be threatening to white people. You see, Stacks turned into a powerhouse for black economic development. The white people conspired using the IRS and the system to vilify and falsely charging Al Bell with bank fraud and trumped up charges. Stacks employed over 200 people, and they were changing the lives of black people in Memphis. Al Bell is one of Memphis's greatest heroes who defined black power and economic equality. Robert R. Church Sr. and Robert R. Church Jr. and Al Bell lends us the model as to how we black Memphians should celebrate our Memphis 200th anniversary. Robert R. Church Sr. was shot in the head twice. He supported Memphis through the yellow fever. He went through racism and challenges, but yet he supported Memphis. Robert R. Church Jr. supported black causes to the end of his life. Al Bell, like the Churches, was a champion of black causes. A champion of black causes is a champion of America. President Lyndon Johnson got the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed, ending legal segregation. Also in 1964, he started the war on poverty, whereas we got food stamps, Medicaid, and Medicare expanded. In 1965, President Johnson got the Voting Rights Act of 1965 passed. Now, in 1967, President Johnson got Thurgood Marshall appointed to the Supreme Court. You see, President Johnson understood that we need help to level the playing field. Now, you would think that a black person, when given an opportunity, would understand the plight of black people and level the playing field. Now, when Dr. Harrington got elected in 1991, we black people were so proud to have a black mayor. I loved and respected Dr. Harrington like family. He was a hero. Now, please refer to Channel 5 news story on June 1st, 2010. I cite the Griffin Strong disparity study. Under the Harrington administration, it was noted that he had the worst record of minority participation in doing business with a city in America. The facts are clear. Out of 2,800 businesses registered to do business with the city of Memphis, only 6 were black, and they were kind of like caterers. Black people were not given the opportunity to work under Dr. Harrington. In fact, the city of Memphis did perhaps, not the city, but perhaps $1 billion worth of work was done in the city downtown, and black people probably did not get 1% of the business. Now, Dr. Harrington was a hero. When he had his house built on Horn Lake, while I never asked for the work, his then fiance came to my business and brought a carpet sample and said, "This is the carpet we want, and we want to give you the work." Dr. Harrington gave that work to white companies, and he did not support black businesses. It was a hurting thing that Dr. Harrington had a whole neighborhood built, Banneker Estates, and while we black people are struggling, he never had the heart to give us work. Now, prior to Dr. Harrington being elected, I did federal, state, and city contracts. I had a contract to install carpet with Sears, the largest retail chain in America. I had done work with the city before, and an officer in the contract division noticed that I had the lowest bid on 3 libraries, and they thought it was fair that a black business get work. You know, Harrington's buddy, the controversial police officer who was not the best qualified for a $100,000 a year job as deputy director of the library, Michael Gray. Michael Gray used his power as friends of the mayor to discriminate against me. That man, along with the basketball player Ken Moody, who Dr. Harrington made the city service director, they got me in front of some white people in a board meeting, and they told me to pull the carpet up. They was trying to ruin me. This guy was just a bodyguard, but because he was Harrington's buddy, he could discriminate against me. Now, the city service director told Harrington's buddy that he had nothing to do with my contract. I had a contract with the city, and they told that man to leave me alone. It was painful that Dr. Harrington was going to allow his buddy to discriminate against me. Dr. Harrington was more than just a mayor. He was our hero. White people gave him stocks, and he became their darling. We asked Dr. Harrington, was he going to be like Maynard Jackson in Atlanta? Whereas Maynard Jackson got with the people in Atlanta and asked them to do set-asides for black people, to guarantee us business to level the playing field. Dr. Harrington said, I am not in the business of making black millionaires. Dr. Harrington became the most powerful politician in West Tennessee. He could have negotiated a deal, whereas we blacks could have been granted set-asides to level the playing field. In fact, in 1992, I met Kenyan President Daniel Arap Moore. I asked Dr. Harrington to make Memphis not only Africa's distribution center. I asked Dr. Harrington to continue the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King via making Memphis the model city where we develop family, trade, and culture with Africa. While Dr. Harrington was my friend, he was not about to take a revolutionary position of adopting a progressive or what he felt was a radical agenda of associating with Africa. Here's a picture I made for Dr. Harrington, who looked like a Maasai warrior. I made him a picture also enclosed in Ghana, where he looked like an Ashanti. In fact, in 1959, baseball great Jackie Robinson, singer Harry Belafonte, and actor Sidney Poitier lent their names on a letter to raise money to pay airfare to bring Kenyan students to America to go to school. A young Kenyan by the name of Tom Mboya started a program called Airlift America, and one of the beneficiaries of the program was a young Kenyan who went to school in Hawaii by the name of Barack Obama Sr. In fact, on May 13th, 1959, Dr. Martin Luther King and the SCLC arranged an African Freedom Dinner for Tom Mboya. And at the dinner, Dr. King said, quote, "Our struggle is not an isolated struggle. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality." Dr. King supported Kenya. Thanks to Kenya, we African Americans got our first African American president. Dr. Harrington supported in 2006 the Cotton Museum, which was a museum of white supremacy. However, Dr. Harrington would not be associated with Africa. Dr. Harrington, just looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Listen, Ham, I'm not going to support Africa, but you always got your boy, Steve Cohen.
One of my constituents, five-time karate and kickboxing champion Anthony Amp Elmore, fulfilled his lifelong dream. After returning to Memphis, Amp developed his vision of educating and enlightening people about the cultural and economic importance of Africa as a continent, as well as Ghana. At his home and throughout the city, he showcased African artifacts, fabrics, and art. This weekend, on Friday and Saturday both, he'll be honoring Africa at his home and inviting the public, and having a fashion show and an African dinner. I'll be there.
Most people had never heard of Arthur Big Boy Crudup. Elvis, as a kid at 11 years old, used to listen to the 1946 record of a black man by the name of Arthur Big Boy Crudup. In 1954, Elvis, as a white man, simply re-recorded this black man's song. Listen for yourself.
For you, that's all right now, mama. Any way you do, but that's all right. Well, that's all right, mama. That's all right for you. That's all right, mama. Just any way you do, that's all right. That's all right. Oh, my love, my darling, I hungered for your touch. Oh, my love, my darling, I hungered for your touch.
The Elvis white supremacists created three things. Number one, they made rock and roll white. Number two, they used the Elvis culture to segregate rock and roll music. Number three, they used white supremacy and created inequality, noting that only Elvis was supreme and king. In celebration of the Memphis Shelby County 200 celebration, we call for a national and international demonstration challenging the Elvis grace and white supremacy. We ask writers, directors, producers, and people over the world to call it for what it is, white supremacy. We would like the Memphis community to join together and change the narrative from white supremacy to the American integration and acceptance of black music. America's original music is black music, and it is rock and roll. I personally would like to write, produce, direct the movie The Black Side of Elvis. We black people invented rock and roll, and we will be the rock and roll capital of the world. People who come to Memphis can not only enjoy Elvis, they in Memphis can find the original spirit of rock and roll. Our job and our new role, we will create jobs, build income, and create a more integrated and prosperous Memphis. Tyler Perry movies are a brand and an industry that will create billions of dollars. Just last year, the Black Panther movie created well over $1 billion. We in Memphis can come together with not only music, but we can create some of the great movies that will inspire the world. We in this lecture have introduced the story idea of Robert R. Church Sr. There's a story of Robert R. Church Jr. We have a story of the Black Union soldiers. And my goodness, we got the Al Bell story of Stax. And we can even create more Elvis movies, but this time inclusive of African Americans. What is even more exciting is that I traveled to Kenya a few months ago, and we're looking to not only honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. via bringing Africans and African Americans together, we will pick up the gauntlet of Dr. King And for our 200th anniversary, Memphis will be the city where we formally connect with our African ancestors. The 2018 Blue Wave elections in Memphis and Shelby County resulted in the largest number of African Americans, progressive whites, being elected in Memphis history. Memphis has the ability to advance a progressive agenda. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black History Month, formed an organization in 1915 to promote the scientific study of Black life and history called the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Lonnie G. Bunch III, founding director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, writes, quote, "There is no more powerful force than a people steeped in their history, and there is no higher cause than honoring our struggle and ancestors by remembering," unquote. We not only made this movie 200 years of Black Memphis history to honor our struggle and ancestors by remembering, we traveled to Kenya to ask Kenya President Uhuru Kenyatta to honor our struggle and our ancestors via the president coming to Memphis to pick up the torch of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Kenya's Tarman Warrior visiting our together via our coming together for family, trade, and culture. Kenya governor, scientist, educational, humanitarian, Dr. Professor Peter Nango answered our call to visit Memphis, Tennessee in celebration and honor of our 200th bicentennial celebration. Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris ducked out and did not want to be seen with African dignitaries. You see, the betrayal of this is a stolen legacy of Orange Mound. You see, the story of Black leadership in Memphis, now this is in 2019 to the present, is a tragedy of betrayal cloaked in the guise of progress. It is the story of how the very officials elected to uplift the largest Black population city in America chose instead to exploit its history and its elders for political gain. You see, culminating in a literal attempt to rewrite Orange Mound legacy. The Black Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris pulled a fraud. He gave a taxpayer building to then 83-year-old Black female Orange Mound resident Mary E. Mitchell. You see, in 2020, and they did this in the name of the Orange Mound Arts Council. The Orange Mound Arts Council is a sham run by a white man by the name of Don Gilbert. You see, in 2017, Don Gilbert got the white Shelby County Mayor Mark Luttrell to name Mary E. Mitchell the Orange Mound historian. You see, now Mary E. Mitchell has not written one sentence of documented history. No history, no background, no authority to call herself an Orange Mound historian. You see, with that authority, Mary Mitchell then becomes the white chosen voice of Orange Mound, whereas everything about Orange Mound is great, everything about Orange Mound is sacred, and anything that happens in Orange Mound, the voice or the spokesperson for Orange Mound is Mary E. Mitchell. You see, instead of putting resources in Orange Mound, the media goes to Mary Mitchell, an elderly Black female who is the white chosen voice of Orange Mound, who always says everything is great and Orange Mound is sacred. You see, Lee Harris used the white playbook, coming to Orange Mound, giving a building of Orange Mound Arts Council that's run by Don Gilbert. See, these are the facts. Miss Mary Mitchell is not in good health. Today in 2025, she's 89 years old, and the Orange Mound Arts Council is a fraud, a 5013C organization that is pimping Black Memphis, they're pimping Orange Mound. You see, Mary Mitchell gets the benefit, whereas Memphis Mayor Paul Young comes in and gives Mary Mitchell a $150,000 remodel home. Mary Mitchell is used for political expediency. You see, they promote this fraud and they go around pimping black folk. That Orange Mound Arts Council does nothing. You see, Paul Young just put up a sign in Orange Mound that stated that Orange Mound started in 1890. Orange Mound is more than a neighborhood. It is a monument to black resilience. You see, Mary Mitchell, Dr. Charles Williams, Mayor Paul Young, you are not understanding. You are betraying Dr. Martin Luther King. You see, Orange Mound is a monument to black resilience, black faith, and black agency. Yet today, its history is being rewritten to erase the very people who built it. That Orange Mound sign of 1890 is wrong. It is written on the new sign that Orange Mound began in 1890. This date was not chosen to honor truth, but to rob black people of agency. Agency means the power to act, to create, to build for yourself. And in 1879, black people in Memphis exercised that agency when they founded Mount Moriah Baptist Church and Mount Pisgah Church in 1879. You see, these churches were not just places of worship. They were anchors of a black community already thriving in Orange Mound. In fact, in 1883, Mount Moriah Baptist Church purchased the land at Boston and Carnes, where it still stands today. By 1890, Shelby County placed a school directly behind the church at Boston and Spotswood. A school proves what the sign denies. There was already an existing black community organized, educated, and proud. But in 1890, a white man named Eugene Easley Mitchell bought 60 acres of land and registered the subdivision as Orange Mound. He did not create the community. He simply put his name on it and what black people had already built. Yet history books and now the new sign that Black Memphis Mayor Paul Young put up credit the white man, erasing the black agency of black churches and black families who had been there for over a decade. This is the old practice of white supremacy as being supported by Black Memphis Mayor Paul Young, whereas whites appropriate black achievement, giving credit to white man, and now Black Memphis Mayor Paul Young gonna give the credit of a white man by putting up a sign that says Orange Mound started in 1890. They are betraying the truth. They are betraying black pride and betraying the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, who gave his life in Memphis for justice and dignity. Dr. King taught us that silence in the face of injustice is betrayal. To uphold the 1890 date is to side with white supremacy against black agency. It is to erase the churches, the families, the children, and the schools that prove Orange Mound began in 1879. This is not just about a sign, Mayor Paul Young. It's about whether black leaders will honor black truth or bow to white lies. It is about whether Memphis will celebrate the agency of its black people or continue to erase them. Mayor Paul Young, by you supporting this falsehood, you are betraying Dr. King and the black Memphis leaders who are silent. Dr. King said silence is betrayal. You are betraying the people of Orange Mound, and you are betraying the very idea of black pride. Orange Mound started in 1879, and that is the truth. That is the history, and that is the agency of black people. That no sign, no mayor, no white supremacist narrative can erase. Orange Mound is not the creation of Eugene Mitchell. It is the creation of black churches, black families, and black agency. To deny that is to deny us, and we will not be denied. Mayor Paul Young, we will not be denied. What you're doing is wrong, is racist, and is white supremacist act, and you should be ashamed of yourself.